first off, thank you all for being here. We really appreciate it. We were going to talk about a little bit about fire history, a little bit about fire behavior, and how to extinguish fires inside here for a few minutes. Then we're going to go outside and actually do some hands-on demonstrations, practical applications with fire suppression techniques. So we talked just a little bit about fire. What is fire? You know, fire is our friend, but fire can be an enemy also, right? We need to have fire because without fire there's no heat, and without heat we don't have existence as people. We use fire for cooking, we use fire for forging tools, we use fire to cook our food, we use fire for a variety of things, for light and warmth. Without it, we would be in a problem. But uncontrolled fire is when we start to run into issues. So we have to be able to take that fire that is a tremendous resource for us, a tremendous energy source, and control it. So the first known documented history of where fire actually goes back about 1.4 million years into Kenya. Scientists have actually found underground remnants of burned up material that they dated back to 1.4 million years. That's the first signs of actual fire. The uncontrolled fire, though, we talk about is where we get into problems. And pretty much every major city here in the United States and many other cities internationally has experienced a major fire, including Chicago when it burned down in 1871. So that's what we're looking for. How do we control that fire? The first known fire brigade that was created to help control fires was back in the 3rd century BC in Rome. They actually had a group of 500 people, volunteers, who came together to help control fires back in that era. The first brigade, again, the 3rd century BC in Rome. The first known fire code that we're aware of, that's on record that we're aware of, was in 1631 in Boston. So right here in the United States, Governor John Winthrop, he outlawed wooden chimneys and thatch roofs. That was the first indication we have of engineering or enforcement techniques to stop the spread of fire. Because people had controlled fires inside their houses. They always had a fire going for heat. They had the fire going for light, for cooking their food, but fire was getting uncontrolled. And think about a term that we hear oftentimes. We hear about hook and ladder trucks. What is a hook and ladder truck? Well, back in that day, the truck with the hook and ladder was the one that came with the ladder to put up to your roof and the hooks to pull the thatch off your roof to stop the fire from spreading in different directions. So they didn't really control the fires by extinguishing them, but they took down the areas where the fire would spread. So we know that. We're going back to 1631 for that. 1736, Ben Franklin started the first volunteer fire department here in the United States. You may or may not have been aware of that. And in 1736, what they used to control fires back then were buckets. So you've heard of a bucket brigade, right? All the residents in the community were required to have 2 buckets. And there would be a cistern where there was water. And the people would throw their buckets out in the street, and able-bodied citizens would make a line from where the fire was to where the water supply was. And they'd have one line going to where the water was, they'd fill it up, pass it across, put the full buckets, go back in the other direction, and people would throw buckets of water onto the fire. And that's how they were controlled. This just in. And that was back in the Ben Franklin day. In 1853, the city of Cincinnati, Ohio, formed the first full-time fire department. They had all career firefighters back then in 1853, right here in Cincinnati, Ohio. Today in the United States, 70% of the fire protection in this country is provided by volunteers. So in this area, we're very rich with full-time career firefighters. Most of the country, though, is protected by volunteers. From the 1870s to the early 1900s, another method of fire protection was the fire grenades. We were just talking about these. And these were awesome. These are glass grenades filled with carbon tetrachloride, and when there was a fire, you would throw this at the fire, it would hit, the glass would break, the product would spill out, and it would extinguish the fire. And they were very effective. They came in different sizes, shapes, and colors, but there were 2 problems with these. One was when the fire was extinguished, you still had broken glass all over the floor, and 2, when the carbon tetrachloride got heated by the fire, it turned into phosgene gas, and that's not good for us. Right? So these were finally phased out. They came in the manual model like this, and they also had a bracket where you could mount it on a wall with a fusible link on here that would melt, and it would drop the fire grenade onto where a fire was. So that's just a little bit of the history about how fire extinguishing progressed. And we got these tin tube fire extinguishers that had fire extinguishing powder inside of them. These, again, were deployed manually. This from ages ago when we used these into the manual fire extinguisher that we know today that we use for extinguishing fires. In 1812, going back to 1812, the very first fire sprinkler system was developed by William Congrove. and it was installed in the Theatre Royal at the Drury Lane in London. So that's where the first fire sprinkler system came in. He had a series of pipes that ran throughout the building and a large tank of water. And if there was a fire that was detected someplace, they would manually activate the tank to release the water into the perforated pipes, and it would spray water all over the building to put the fire out. Problem with that, it wasn't centralized. It shed water throughout the entire building. So that process was improved in the 1870s. There's a couple other names here. Philip Pratt improved it. Then Henry Parmalee was another one who developed fire sprinklers better. And then Frederick Grinnell is probably the father of perfecting the fire sprinkler systems as we know them today. So much the same as he did this back in 1870s, 1890s, is the system that we're using today. The fire sprinklers have repeatedly proven their value into saving people's lives. The fire sprinklers are here where they need to be when there's a fire. So you can't even see the sprinklers. This room is protected by fire sprinklers. They're in the ceiling. That plate drops down. The fusible link inside will melt, and it'll discharge water onto where a fire is. So that's the way the fire sprinkler works. Primarily, when the fire sprinkler systems came into being, they were used more often in commercial buildings. So they were used to protect goods more than they were used to protect people. So the United States was doing pretty well with protecting buildings with fire systems, but we weren't taking care of our population. Until around 1973, the National Commission for Fire Prevention and Control did a study in the United States called America's Burning. And they released this report and said, why would one of the leading industrial countries in the world have such terrible statistics for fire-related injuries, fire-related deaths, and fire loss? We have to do better than that. So one of the programs that came out of that commission was the start of residential fire sprinklers. So we were protecting stuff up until that point, and from that point forward, we started to protect people. So for the last 40 years or so, residential fire sprinkler systems are becoming more popular. And here in Elk Grove Village, they're required for all new construction. So it's very good there. Again, they've repeatedly proven themselves. The slow but steady progress is continuing, and we're getting there. So hopefully, as buildings get retrofitted, as new houses get built, we'll continue to include the fire sprinklers, which again is by code. We've got some fact versus fiction when it comes to fire sprinklers. Okay, our fire sprinklers first is not all the sprinklers activate when there's a fire. We have a fire in this corner, the sprinkler head up there will likely activate, control the fire. The other heads in the room are not going to activate. So we don't have extensive water damage that way. Smoke does not cause sprinklers to activate. So if you burn some food, you burn something in the microwave, it's not going to cause your sprinkler system to activate. If the system is installed properly and tested and maintained properly, it's not going to freeze in the wintertime. And the incidence of sprinkler systems leaking is actually quite rare. So some of those things that we talk about are not necessarily threats that are real to the people, right? We look at this as another way too, is we talk about water that comes out of a sprinkler system and might cause damage to your building. Things that get wet eventually are going to dry out, and there's a really good chance you're going to be able to use them again. Things that burn up in a fire are gone forever, and there's no chance of getting them back. So you got some choices there that need to be made, right? A sprinkler system activation that makes things in your room wet will probably put you out of business for a week or so while things get redone, put back together. If you have a fire in your house or in your business or house is someplace you love, there's a really good chance you're going to be displaced for a good 6 months, if not more, until the repairs can be made and buildings get back up and running. So in that end too, it's better to have that protection. And a sprinkler system is going to work all the time. You have a smoke detector in your house, it lets you know that there's a fire when it senses smoke. But if you're not home, it doesn't do anything to take care of the fire. Sprinkler system can extinguish the fire. So why is that important today? Well, we're talking about a few different things. We're talking about sprinkler systems. We're talking about extinguishing systems that we use. One of the things that we wanted to do today is show some side-by-side comparisons. The product that drove our demonstration today is called the fire extinguisher ball. And it's auto fire off, the AFO fireball. So we wanted to investigate these here in Elk Grove Village because they're becoming quite popular out in social media world, out on the internet. You can see these demonstrated in a lot of places. We're thinking that at some point our public is going to want to know how well these devices work. And we don't have any data to support that. So we wanted to take this opportunity today, and with the assistance from the folks who built the fire pods here, we're going to do a side-by-side demonstration. We have one room that's protected with a residential sprinkler system. We have one room that has the fireball mounted on the wall inside. And then we've got a third room that's going to be protected by the fire department. And we'll see what produces the best protection for that room when there's a fire. We're going to have 3 fires. We're going to light them simultaneously and see what product works best for the fire extinguishment. Our thought was, with this device, depending on how well it works, this would be something we could carry in police cars, we could carry them in public works trucks, we could carry them in the command vehicles for the fire department. If they prove to be effective, it could be a good tool to have. So we're anxious to see how this works. We're fairly confident that the fire sprinklers work well. It's been 150 years of success. They've been doing tremendous. We're very confident they're going to do well. We're fairly confident our firefighters will do well. But the amount of time, the amount of burning that takes place from when a fire starts to when the firefighters put water on it is a tremendous difference. And there's a lot of damage can be done in that amount of time. Another point to consider is the fire sprinkler is going to discharge 15 gallons of water a minute, give or take. When our folks come, we're coming in with a nozzle of water that's going to give you 200 gallons of water a minute. So we have to think about water damage that way too. So we're anxious to give this a try. When we talk about improvements that have been made in fire safety and how we're going in the world, why would we worry about this today when we've got so many codes? We've got our education, we're educating the public, we've got our enforcement, we've got our engineering, all those things are in place. How are we doing? Well, the latest statistics from the US Fire Administration tells us there are 1.3 million fires a year, 3,655 fire deaths. That's 10 people a day dying in fires. And you might not see it here, but maybe not today. You don't know when it's going to happen here. 75% of the fire deaths occur in residential properties. 15,000 people are injured every year by fire, and the fire loss from this data, which is from 2018, that's the most current available, $25.6 billion in fire loss in 2018. Now, put a little asterisk here. There were some major wildland fires that year. If we remove the wildland fires and the property damage done from those, we only have $13 billion in damage. That's still pretty significant, right? And it seems like these wildland fires are happening every year now. They're much more common. So we know that there's about 380,000 residential building fires every year. This is what we're trying to protect. We want to protect our homes, our valuables, our families, the places where we live, the people we love is what we're trying to protect here. 51% of the fires in houses are caused by cooking. So we've got to make sure we can protect the kitchen. So what do we do with this? Do we have an extinguisher in the kitchen? Possibility. Do we put this in the kitchen? Possibility. A sprinkler system in the kitchen? We know that one works. So we want to try these things and see how they work. But we know that 51% of the fires start in the kitchen. 9% are caused by heating. Okay? Those are the things we're looking for. So the side-by-side comparison, we're not only going to have those 3 fires. We've got plenty of opportunity. We've got 18 fireballs, somewhere around there. So we've got opportunities. Again, the folks from Sprinkler Fitters, Local 281 built the rooms here for us, provided these materials. We're going to try them out. We're going to go with these balls and see what happens. Our primary mission here is to learn. We want to learn how these work. Our next mission is to see where we can go from here, to see what the fire looks like when it's controlled with a sprinkler, to see what it looks like when it's controlled by the fire department. Again, learn about these. First and foremost, everybody's going to be safe. So anyone who wants the opportunity to take one of these balls and throw it into a room that's on fire, we've got that opportunity for you. We're going to do that outside. So that's what we're looking at. Side-by-side comparisons to see how things work and learn how these AFL balls work. Do we have any questions? No. All right, so we thought we'd start off in here instead of talking outside. Jason Stadle's our fire marshal. He's going to be here with us as well. If we don't have any other questions, we're going to go outside and start lighting fires. Again, we're going to light 3 of them at once, see where that goes. We'll take that furniture out, we'll restock it, and we'll light another fire again so people can get a chance to throw these balls in. Okay, we good? All right, outstanding. Thank you all. And again, thanks to Tom from the Northern Illinois Fire Sprinkler Initiative and the fitters from Local 281. We really appreciate your help. You guys, thank you. Starting with the one on your left, this one will be protected by a residential fire sprinkler system. We'll see how that works. The one in the center, you see, has the fire ball mounted up on the wall. So it's mounted here up on the wall. That should detect and deploy automatically. And then the fire on will be suppressed by the fire department. We're going to give this an amount of time for the fires to burn to simulate the amount of time it would take the fire department to get here. So we're going to give that a couple of minutes and see how the fire develops. Pardon me?
What is that estimated time?
Well, the estimated time for the fire department to arrive before the hose line and get to work probably in the area of 6 minutes. If we allow this to burn for 6 minutes, there won't be anything left. So we're gonna gauge this, and we're gonna do a little flexible. So if our igniters are all ready, safety. And these are our fire suppression people here. I think you'll be surprised when you see the growth of the fire, how they work here. Okay, you can ignite all 3 of the fires, please. You'll hear we've got a smoke detector activated in the center unit. That's the fire ball that just deployed. It deployed rather quickly. Okay, we've got a good fire in the unprotected building. Fire's going pretty well in the center unit.
15 seconds, Chief.
15 seconds, the fireball is already deployed, but we still have fire there.
Sprinkler, 22 seconds.
26 seconds for the fire sprinkler to activate. So we see the fire is being suppressed in the sprinkler unit. Okay, we're learning here that the fireball that was mounted to the wall has not extinguished the fire. And the fire department is still en route for your 911 call here on the right.
45 seconds, Chief.
We're at 45 seconds. The building in the center is flashed over. That is now an uncontrolled fire. A fire in a second floor bedroom that would now be extending out into the hallway and spreading down the hallway.
Minute.
All right, we're at 1 minute. The fire department is going to put water on the center unit. We can turn off the water to the fire sprinkler unit. So the reality is we learned that the fireball did not extinguish the fire in the center unit. We hoped it would do
Let it go, Dave.
That was the intent.
Come on, Dave.
The fire department has arrived now and is putting water in the unprotected unit.
Minute and a half, Chief.
We're at 90 seconds. So yeah, our thought of having this go for a couple of minutes is just not going to be realistic. Dave, yeah, you can please go ahead and extinguish the fires, and then we'll look at the differences. Okay, so our lesson that we learned, again, the primary reason we were here today was to learn about the fireballs and to see how well they would work. Unfortunately, the fireball did deploy in the center unit, but it does not control that fire. This fire was uncontrolled, extinguished by the fire department. The unit on your left actually has minimal fire damage. It was extinguished completely by the sprinkler system without intervention by the fire department. So in 90 seconds, we can see the difference the residential fire sprinkler made versus the non-protected buildings over here. So it's a valuable lesson. We're going to try some more fires with the fireball to see how it works when we throw it into a building that's burning, when we throw it onto some material that's burning, to see how that works. A little bit later on, we're going to do another demonstration with the fire sprinkler unit here. But if you look at this, and decide in your mind how you would want your property to look, which is most effective at controlling your fire, I think we would all agree that the residential fire sprinkler protection was by far better than the other two options. Okay, so we're going to reset those. We're going to get some new furniture in there. Anybody who wants the opportunity to take one of the orange balls and put it into a fire, you're going to have the chance to do that now. Thank you everyone who participated in our demonstration here today. Mayor Craig Johnson, we appreciate his participation as well. I think we've learned some valuable lessons here. We've talked a little bit about fires, fire behavior, the dangers of uncontrolled fire, and what we've learned through our side-by-side comparison here is there is no better fire protection than a properly installed, properly working fire sprinkler system. If you look at this, these sprinkler systems were activated in about 11 seconds, immediately extinguished the fire. We've got some wet furnishings in there. That's going to dry out. It's going to clean up nicely. Everything's going to be fine. Second to the installed fire sprinkler protection was the protection provided by the fire department. However, the protection provided by the fire department comes at a higher cost because it takes time for us to get the phone call, to get our equipment gathered, to travel from our place to your place, to deploy our hose lines, get inside to where the water is going to do good. You still see we try to get as we can, but we still have extensive fire damage. The center room here is where we had the fire ball mounted on the wall. Again, one of the main reasons we wanted to get together today was to experiment with those balls and see how they would work in actual fire conditions. The balls did deploy, they expelled their agent, but they didn't do much in the way of controlling fires. So our experiment here, I will call our experiment a success. However, I don't know that we could recommend the use of those balls because they did not appear to do what they were intended to do. So that's our presentation here again. Again, for the Northern Illinois Fire Sprinkler Initiative people, Tom Leah, the Sprinkler Fitters Local 281, the Elk Grove Village Fire Department, the elected officials, the village staff who's here. We really appreciate everybody's participation today and hope you found this beneficial. Have a great day. Thank you.